In 1853, Japan had no railroads, no modern factories, no steamships. It was a feudal, isolated society where classes within the country were fighting for control. Their military was decentralized. In Japan, being feudal meant that power was held by regional lords called daimyo, who controlled their own lands and armies, often operating independently from the central government. 50 years later, Japan had crushed the Russian Empire in war, becoming an industrial power and joined the ranks of global empires. How did this come about? One of the key players was, tariffs. For over 200 years, Japan shut itself off from the world under a policy called Sakoku, or closed country. Foreign trade was banned, except for a tiny port in Nagasaki. And that worked until it didn't. In 1853, U.S. Commodore Matthew Perry showed up with steam-powered black ships and a message: open your ports or else. Japan, realizing it couldn't match the Western firepower, signed a series of unequal treaties. These treaties stripped Japan of its right to control tariffs. That meant it couldn't protect local industries from cheaper, mass-produced foreign goods. Japan was stuck in the global economy, defenseless. That humiliation sparked a national awakening. In 1868, the ruling Tokugawa shogunate was overthrown. The emperor, previously a symbolic figure, was restored to power in what's called the Meiji Restoration. Instead of fighting amongst themselves, this common external enemy instilled a sense of nationalism in the people of Japan. The new Meiji government had one goal: catch up to the West, fast. They built railroads, created a national army, introduced public education, and sent students abroad to study science, engineering, and economics. But without control over tariffs, Japan's new industries were still exposed to foreign competition. In the 1890s, after decades of diplomacy and internal modernization, Japan finally regained control over its tariffs, and it didn't waste time. The government raised duties on imported goods, especially things like textiles, steel, and ships, to protect its own industries, like Mitsubishi, Kawasaki, and Yawata Steel. The government directly sponsored companies. It built factories, and then sold them to private owners, often at a loss, just to get the industry moving. This was state capitalism, Meiji style. It worked. Japan's industrial output exploded, and in just over a few decades, it went from almost nothing to one of the most advanced economies in all of Asia. Then came 1904. Japan, now a fully fledged imperialistic nation with a desire to expand, went to war with Russia over control of Korea and parts of Manchuria. No one expected Japan to win, but in 1905 it sank the Russian Baltic fleet and forced the Tsar, the Russian leader, to negotiate peace. It was the first time an Asian country had defeated a European empire in modern warfare. The world was stunned, and at this moment, the Russo-Japanese War wasn't just a military victory. It was proof that Japan was now an industrial and modern global power. The tariffs that the U.S. imposed upon Japan were not meant to help them. In fact, they were meant to harm Japan. However, these tariffs established some sense of Western society as a common external enemy, which instilled a sense of nationalism in the people of Japan and led them to become a very powerful empire. This is, in fact, a phenomenon you see a lot throughout history. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the American Revolution are all similar instances. However, tariffs gave Japan breathing room it needed to grow, and that growth gave it strength, and strength gave it power. So yeah, tariffs aren't just a boring economic policy. For Japan, they were a launchpad, a catalyst, and a shield. They helped transform a feudal, isolated island into a global empire in less than half a century. And while today's global economy is all about free trade, Japan's story shows us sometimes a little protection goes a long way. The tariffs before led Japan to become a superpower. What will today's tariffs lead to?